Hello friends, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of DotaAlchemy.com, and I was just watching the KL Major. I was watching Pain versus J-Storm, and Misery actually made me have this realization, something I have thought about before, but he made me kind of re-realize it, and that's the fact that the 5 role has an incredible amount of depth, and I think that a lot of people think that they can play it, but they can't. And the reason that I say that is because I've played on a lot of teams in the past in North America, and there's always this thing that happens at the start of every team where you'll have some carry player, some mid player transition to support because it's very hard to find supports in North America. So somebody will just be like, yeah, I can do it, I can support, and then 2 weeks will pass, the team will fail horribly, and then that player will go back to carry or mid. And that's usually because a lot of people think that they can play 5, but they really can't because they don't realize the level of depth that there is to this role. And this is something that in this game, the play that I'm going to show you guys, Misery made an amazing play that made me realize, good God, you really have to be smart to play this role at a high level. So the play that I want to show you guys happens, or I should say starts, at 9 minutes and 32 seconds into the game. And honestly, the next 2 minutes of supporting from Misery is just mind-blowing to me, how much he gets done and how much he adapts to the current game state. So basically, he starts out by dewarding a ward behind his tower, which is pretty cool. Lack of vision for the enemies, always going to be good. And then the next thing that he does is he smokes to place 2 wards in their jungle. So already, I want to point out that doing this in a competitive environment is already a relatively high-level play, simply because those early smokes really matter. They need to smoke and kill the Terrorblade at some points. They might want to smoke behind the Venomancer. It's very hard to kill these heroes without a smoke, so wasting them is definitely no bueno if he's not getting very important vision. But he knows that he's getting very important vision, and that's just because he's a good player. And he knows how the Terrorblade is going to want to play, and that's why he goes to place these wards. So what he does is he walks to the enemy hill, goes to the left. He places a high ground ward because he knows this is going to scout the Spirit Breaker charging across the map. So that's a really good ward for that reason. This is also going to scout in this area for if he can go deeper to place a better ward. So maybe he'll walk this way and ward this cliff. But I think what happens is there's some communication in the team where the troll is saying, okay, bounty runes are spawning, let's defend ours, or maybe Misery says it. But essentially, the plan changes. The bounty runes are the next goal, and Misery says, okay, I'm going to trade my Smoke of Deceit for this kill on the Spirit Breaker. Unfortunately, because March is a god, they don't get the bounty rune, but he gives Troll the last hit. 174 gold, some experience. They see that a haste rune spawns, and Misery says, okay, the game state changed. I had to go fight that bounty rune. I'm going to adapt. And he still wants to place the deep vision because he knows how important it is in this game, given how Terrorblade wants to play. Essentially, he knows that Terrorblade is going to very likely be farming between this tri-camp and then these 3 camps over here, because that's what Terrorblade does. This bottom area is going to be occupied by the Venomancer, who is in the fog here, simply because he knows that the Dire is going to be aggressively pushing this out. The Safe Lane Tower is almost always the first that's going to fall, so Venomancer is just going to defend that for as long as possible, and that's why Bryle is going to be farming in this camp area over here. So what he wants to do is he wants to place Vision, which is going to set up for a potential kill on Bryle, and that's why if we look at the spawn box, he places the ward right here and not blocking. So I'm not sure if he intentionally placed it there, knowing that Bryle would catch a little bit of a glimpse of him in the jungle, or if he just clicked it and then all of a sudden Bryle came into vision. He's like, oh damn, I need to adapt. But in any case, what he does next is really, really cool. So he places this ward not blocking. He wants to eventually scout the Terrorblade farming here, because like I said, he knows that that's how the Terrorblade wants to play. Hits the illusion a bit. Bryle pings it, probably saying like, hey guys, there's a Bane in our jungle alone. Obviously, this guy is going to be warding. So what he does is he places a sentry ward, which is going to be 6 minutes because they buffed sentries, on this camp and intentionally blocking. So what this is going to do is the next time Bryle comes into this area, he's going to think, okay, Bane placed vision. I didn't exactly see where because it was quick, only caught a glimpse of him, but this camp is blocked. And Bryle is going to ping this camp, his supports are going to deward it, and then all of a sudden, that's going to be 100 gold spent on a sentry for a 100 gold sentry, so it costs Misery nothing to do this, essentially, and the camp maybe 2 to 3 minutes later, that's 3 spawns that are blocked that Bryle is not going to be farming. So Misery is actually gaining gold by placing this vision here. And then what's going to happen is that this vision is still going to be there and not dewarded unless they get incredibly lucky and deward both of these things at the same time, which is very unlikely to happen. So basically, this ward is going to be left completely scot-free, and the enemy team is going to feel safe farming in this area because it was dewarded. So it's actually better that he gets seen doing this, and if he makes this play, placing the sentry here, than if he doesn't get seen at all, because it's going to give them that false sense of security, which is going to result in exactly what he wanted in the first place when he came to put these deep wards down, which is to kill the Terrorblade when he's farming this kind of tri-camp area here. So that was mind-blowing to me, and we'll go ahead and check out the aftermath of this and what actually happens. So here we are at 11:52 into the game, and we're looking at Bryle's perspective. And we can see that he walks over to this area that, of course, Misery predicted that he is going to be farming because he's a Terrorblade. And he farms this camp. He scouted doing this, by the way, because the ward is still there, although Bryle doesn't necessarily know that. And then he walks over to this camp and says, hey, nobody farmed this. And we can see the pings come out. He pings that is warded. So maybe I'm not giving Bryle the benefit of the doubt, but for the most part, when carry players or mid players ping a camp like that, they'll usually say, hey guys, this is warded, just because that's the very first assumption that you make. And let me tell you, as a core player, we don't think all that much about what supports are doing. So for the most part, Bryle probably said, hey, this is warded. And at the very least, what happened is, if Bryle predicted correctly that it's a sentry ward, he's still pinging for his supports to deward this. And that means that this area is very likely only going to have one sentry on it, which is going to deward this sentry ward. So Misery, even if Bryle was able to predict that this was a sentry ward, by placing both of these wards, essentially what Misery did is he forced the enemy team to choose between dewarding one of these, realistically, because you don't want to spend 200 gold. You're not entirely sure, but you're sure that there's something in this camp. So he essentially kind of forced their hand, bluffed them out, and Bryle kind of took the bluff. So here we are at 14:48 into the game. We have March over here with his sentries, 2 sentries, by the way, and he's looking to deward this camp that his carry player pinged out. So he places down the sentry in a place that is likely to deward this camp and also scout for some vision over here. He gets just a sentry, so that's 100 gold for 100 gold spent. And it's actually been 4 camp spawns worth of gold that is lost for J-Storm in the time that this camp was blocked. And essentially, Misery's bluff worked perfectly. Bryle pings this camp, so March comes over, dewards it. We can see that he has 2 sentries, but he does not bother to place another one because really, when you see that this camp is blocked, you know that the Bane was in your jungle warding. It kind of feels like he probably went over here and placed a ward there. And then once you deward that, you know that you just don't have any other information on where he could have placed the observer ward, or whether he even did, or maybe he was just blocking. There are so many questions, and Misery essentially bluffed J-Storm by giving them the certainty that there was something in this camp. And as a result, March walks away and he doesn't place another sentry. You can see that he puts it into his backpack and then switches it with his TP, but he just walks away and he does something else. So now the Dire has this vision here to play around, and the Radiant feels safe that there's no vision around here because there's a sentry sitting right here. And they essentially traded 100 gold for 100 gold plus all of these camp spawns. So it's just such an effective play from a 5-roll who has nothing. He has no items. And that's why 5-roll is so goddamn hard. That Misery's doing this with little to no resources. Unfortunately for Pain, they didn't end up winning this game. The series, though, not going to spoil it, an absolute slugfest of a series. This game was a slugfest too. Very even in terms of skill. So if you're looking for a really cool series to check out, this is a really good one. Also, if you're looking to learn support, you can look at Misery's player perspective in this game. The match ID is on the screen. He did a lot of really cool high-level stuff in this game that resulted in one-team fights that you would almost never see 5-roll supports do in pub. So definitely really good for learning purposes. And unfortunately, the play where he did the bluff play with the sentry ward in the camp, that didn't end up resulting in anything substantial, simply because J-Storm didn't happen to walk into the vision after the D-ward was down that gave them that false sense of security. And that just happens in Dota. Sometimes the enemy team just doesn't walk into your vision, and there's nothing that you can do about that. It doesn't take away from the fact that it was still a super next-level play by Misery. So anyway, thank you so much for watching. I do genuinely appreciate it. One more thing that I do want to say, actually, if you want to learn supporting, like I said, there was a lot of other plays in this game where Misery's warding did actually end up in one team fights and stuff like that. It's just that they weren't as high level as the play that we talked about, and I really enjoyed that play, and that's why I wanted to include it in this video. But anyway, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys in another video.